Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick. Grace, Alonso. Holy shit! Gilmore Girls, a year in the life.
Yes, it was back.
And yes, we watched all 4 episodes in one day, and I bet a lot of you did too, if you watched it at all. Obviously, we're about to spoil the crap out of this, so if you haven't watched it yet, as always with these TV things, don't watch us yet, because we're going to give.
Come back.
Yes, by all means,
by all
means. But we're giving it all away. Okay, so this is our first time back in Stars Hollow in 9 years.
Yeah.
I was interested. One thing that has popped out, I've noticed in hearing people on the internet talk about this who are fans of the show, there are people who are very pro the Amy Sherman-Palladino episodes and very anti-Daniel, and I like both. I think they each have a take. You know, in a Daniel episode, you're getting a town meeting, but I like both of them. Do you have any strong feelings about this?
I really like both of them too. I agree with you. I think they both have their tones that they set, and it's really obvious when it's an Amy episode and a Daniel episode. I think Daniel, his episodes, he understands the town a little bit more. He really involves the town. So usually there's always some sort of a festival in Stars Hollow during his episodes. I think Amy does a really good job with the Gilmore Girls and with sort of the family dynamics. And romantically, I think she navigates that pretty well. But both of them do a great job, and they each have their strengths, and they each just understand Gilmore Girls through and through. Whether or not they give us what we wanted, that's debatable, but they do understand who these characters are, whether we like it or not.
I think they just did so much right here. Like, for example, the whole thing where I think they went into this thinking, well, we're not getting Melissa McCarthy, so how do we work around Suki? And the fact that we did get that cameo, I thought was just perfect. But the idea of having a series of celebrity chefs who Lorelai kicks out eventually because of their non-Sukiness, I thought was brilliant.
Rachel Ray was funny.
Yeah, all of Alex Choi and
and the Anthony Bourdain. They had references to him.
Yeah, and Ina Garten.
Yeah,
and,
really good.
Yeah, so I thought that was a lot of fun. I love the evolution of Emily. You know, clearly she's going through a rough period with Richard's death.
Yeah, and I think they really dealt with that. I think the best that I've ever seen a show deal with the passing of a character of the real life actor.
Yes.
I think that they dealt with that just really well, and they gave Emily the time to grieve and to just and allow that to be okay. I think a lot of times in shows there's this urgency to have the character move on and like, that plot line's boring.
Yeah.
I liked that Gilmore Girls explored what does grief mean? What does therapy look like? It's dull sometimes, and it's also monotonous, and you do weird things. You put on jeans. To me, what really stood out about the Netflix series was, yes, it's very different from what we saw on the WB and
the
CW. Yeah.
Coming up next, a fresh Summerland.
It was different, but what I liked about it was not the guest stars, but the supporting characters really had their time to shine, and I really enjoyed Emily Gilmore. Kelly Bishop looks amazing. She did wonderful. Paris Geller, Eliza Wilde, just so good. They really were able to dig into this. Kirk was so great.
Yes.
The Uber storyline wasn't the best Kirk storyline or business we've ever seen, but it was still really
It was
funny.
very Kirk. Showing Tristan at a distance and not letting him talk. Perfect use of Tristan.
Yep.
That was all we needed.
Yeah.
Acknowledgement that he is still alive. And let's move on, shall we? But yeah, and we did obviously get our taste of the Rory verse in terms of, a little bit of Dean, a little bit of Jess, a lot of Logan. And you and I are disagreed on the thing. I've had the same argument with my husband all week because he's hardcore team Jess. And my jury is still out on Jess and his maturity level. And I think that Logan, while being from a family of rich creeps, has the potential to not be a rich creep himself, because I think Rory brings out the best in him. You are making a face. Can we get that face on camera? Because she's scowling like crazy. I will say this. Ultimately, I am teen independent woman Rory.
Okay.
Because look, Lorelai and Luke didn't settle down for, decades after her arrival in Stars Hollow, and she was fine, and she was a single mother, and she was capable, and she didn't, have to be tied down, and there were some potentials there for her, Digger and Max and Christopher would pop in and out, obviously. So I mean, I'm fine with Rory not necessarily having to be tethered.
I see that perspective. I am hardcore team Jess and have been. That's actually how I learned about the show, was through like a a YouTube montage back in the early days of YouTube that was somehow recommended for me, and it was Rory and Jess's relationship set to like a Celine Dion song. And I said, what is this show? I should watch this. And then I did, and I was, Team Jess all the way. I do like that. I like when Lorelai is alone, but Rory is so, I think, very different from Lorelai. When Rory is on her own, she's having sex with a Wookiee, having a one-night stand. She's not, I don't think she is great on her own. She's with Paul, kind of. She's, having sex with Logan while he's engaged to someone else.
I forgot about Paul, like everyone else.
Yeah, we all forgot about Paul. I will have to say, there are a couple elements of the Gilmore Girls on Netflix, A Year in the Life, that I thought we just didn't really need as much of. Like, I understood what they were for, but we didn't need as much of them. I think that with Paul and this sort of forgettable boyfriend that Rory comes into the season having and has until the last episode.
Yeah, well, and the show also forgets about him for a good chunk of time. Then like, oh yeah, you're still around.
He's a person. Rory, you monster. Just break up with him.
But, I think like, what was it, Her on Arrested Development? It's kind of the same thing.
It's a lot like that.
Yeah, and I thought it was a funny joke, and they didn't milk it too hard, and it just sort of underscored Rory's general sense of
aloof. She's very aloof.
She's aloof, but she's just kind of in this messy period of her life where she doesn't know what she's doing personally or professionally. Or ethically, you might argue even, But, I think that's okay. I think that a super put together Rory all the time is not an interesting character. And you can be book smart and capable, but still have your life be kind of a mess. And I think that was expressed really well. The notion that, she thinks of herself as being so far too good for this, the Sandy Says website. But then still, you go into a job interview, you have to have something in your quiver. You can't just expect them to like throw out the rose petals for you,
Yeah, the funny thing about the Sandy Says issue was that I totally understood where she was coming from, but I also completely agree with you.
Yeah.
She thought the job was hers. Why should she prepare for this interview? Great. You still have to prepare for a job. And, I understand that what she thought, but it is a very entitled way of thinking. And I think that was sort of the rub that we had with Rory this season, was that she accomplished so much at a young age. She's only 32, and she did feel sort of entitled to some things, Logan being one of them. Like, she feels, she sort of had dibs on him first, so whatever, if he's engaged, she's still allowed to sleep with him, and, whatever happens in Vegas, as they say, stays in Vegas.
Right.
And I think that it was good how the writers kind of called her out on that a little bit, but I don't think that she still understands. I still think that Rory acts a lot without thinking of the consequences. She sort of thinks that it's going to be taken care of because everyone loves her. She's Rory Gilmore.
And clearly wearing a condom is on that list as well of things that she doesn't feel like she has to do. Okay, fine, Rory. Let's talk about the musical, because that's been another sticking point for a lot of people, where people were either very pro or very con. I'm pro. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was like some of the best Christopher Guest hasn't been doing in a long time, as far as like kind of bad small town musicals. And then I thought the number that was meant to be moving was actually moving.
Yeah, I am con.
Okay.
Well, so when it first started, I really loved it, and I thought it was a great moment. And it's very Stars Hollow to have this musical. I know that they love Sutton Foster. She does a very good job. I love seeing her perform.
To her and Christian Borle, like two of the hottest like Broadway people right now.
Yeah, that was fun.
And I love the idea of a Gilmore Girls Bunheads crossover. Like, I want Sutton Foster to be that character, even if she's not.
Yeah. So I liked it initially. It was just too long for me. I thought it could have been great in about 10 minutes. You condense it. It still would have been fun. You would have enjoyed it. But it went on for way too long for me to still enjoy. But I really liked the musical numbers.
Yeah.
I just wanted less of them. I think you could have kind of cut some of that out.
Music by Janine Tesoro, by the way. I don't know if you noticed.
I didn't know that.
She did the Fun Home score and Carolina Change.
Oh.
So she's a thing. They went to an actual.
To me,
you have to be a really good songwriter to write songs that are that intentionally bad.
Yeah, that are so perfectly bad.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of like the stars.
Working on building stars.
Yeah. So I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was. I'm sure when we see it again, and when you're such a true fan of the show, you're gonna know those musical numbers by heart. I'm already in the process of rewatching it, but as I was watching it first time around, I'm engrossed in the story. I just just wanted to know what was going to happen next. You know, Lorelai and Luke were having that moment where they were rubbing and not really gelling so much, and then Rory was in the tailspin that she was in until they sort of cleaned it up in the fall episode. So the musical felt a little busy.
Like it was padding.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. I was enjoying it, so I didn't mind the distraction. But you're right. If from a story standpoint, it was, you know, expendable, granted. But that's the thing about this show. Sometimes they can just kind of noodle a bit, and it's still funny and it's still interesting. And eventually, you know, they're going to get back to the story. And they had 4 90-minute segments to play around with, so they thought, all right, fuck it, we have the real estate to do this. But yeah, I like the fact that you know, that Lorelai and Luke don't necessarily have a happy ever after. That it's the relationships are a thing you still have to work on, and clearly they're both. They need to work on their communication. If she's not telling him about the therapy and he's not telling her about the restaurant or the empire, you know, I thought that was interesting. You know, as far as creating Lorelai Rory conflict, I think that's never easy to do, but I bought it. The notion that Lorelai doesn't want that story told and doesn't want it out in the world, and maybe has some degree of shame about having been in over her head as a 16-year-old single mom, and maybe doesn't want the world to know all the stuff that went down. And even the ending where they find a way to, like, where Lorelai has to borrow money from the family again. And so, you know, the equivalent of Friday night dinners, which are going to be these vacations in Nantucket, are now being enforced by Emily.
Yeah.
I bought all of that. I thought it was very good writing. And it was a way to give us a familiar level of the character dynamics here without just feeling like a retread.
Yeah, and I do think that they did a really good job of tying everything up. So they kept on saying, you know, full frickin' circle, and they did a really nice job of setting that up that I think they didn't really do at the ending of the 7th season.
Sure, which they couldn't because the Sherman-Palladinos weren't
right,
there.
Right, they couldn't have done it.
The famous 4 final words, we had to wait for this now to get them. And I thought they were great because they not only bring things, like you said, perfectly full circle, but they also open the door for more episodes, which, you know, fingers crossed, the cast and Netflix and everybody wants to do that. You know?
That would be, I would be on board for it. I hope they would. But if they don't, I still think that everything did sort of click into place in this last episode, whether we like it or not. Does that make sense? So I think that I'm a Jess fan. I didn't feel like there was enough Jess and Rory screen time. I wish we'd explored that story a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I can still acknowledge that the ending. Are we allowed to say the final 4 words? Can we say?
Yeah.
Right. It's spoiler alert. It's Mom.
Yeah,
I'm pregnant.
I'm pregnant.
Yeah. Mom. Yeah. I'm pregnant. Yeah.
And
does click.
But yeah, you're right. I think the everyone is in place to where even if we never see these characters again, we know where they are and who's there for who and how and why. And so if Rory has this baby, she's got Stars Hollow the way that Lorelai had Stars Hollow. And she's got Lorelai and Luke in a very good place in their relationship to be support and to be there for each other, but also to be there for her. Emily is in a happier place now and creating a life for herself and Terrifying Tourist, which is the perfect Emily job. So yeah, you're right. I think there's a real sense of catharsis here where if they want to do more, great. But if they don't, we're in a good place and we know where it's all going to go.
Yeah, and I think that what I liked about this Netflix return was that we did get to see all the characters that we fell in love with. Because if you love Gilmore Girls, it's not just because you like Rory and Lorelai and their love interests. You love the town.
You love Michelle and Jackson and Gypsy and Babette and Kirk,
Lane, who I don't think they did a good job with Lane.
I would have liked more Lane and Zach for sure.
Yeah, they could have done more with her.
We did get Mr. Kim though.
We did get Mr. Kim and Mrs. Kim.
We always had Mrs. Kim, but we'd never seen Mr. Kim before.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting just to throw them in there because we didn't get a lot of Mrs. Kim.
And I don't know if you caught this reference when Mrs. Kim is yelling at her singers and she says, "Sing out Louise Pang." "Sing out Louise" is a line from Gypsy, the musical.
I didn't get that.
So just a little tidbit. No, that's what I love about Gilmore Girls. Even to these 4, this is a show that sends me running to Google at least once per episode.
Yeah.
And I'm a nerd, and I know a lot of shit. And even on this show, I'm like, wait, I don't know who Henry Box Brown is. I got to look that up.
Yeah, and the references were all there. And, you know, some of it took a little bit, I thought, for them to get into gear as far as dialogue-wise. But once they hit that stride, I really enjoyed it. It was like coming home. You know, it was a lot like coming home. Some of the characters age differently. That happens. I still loved it. I would be open if they do more, but I am really happy with how they wrapped it up, because this, in my brain, now if they never come back, what I can imagine is that Logan is the father of Rory's child, and he's a super douche, and they have this thing for a while, and then she realizes that he is a super douche.
And he's going to marry Odette anyway because the family wants him to, but he'll be the Christopher.
He'll be the Christopher, and then, you know, Jess is going to be kind of coming in and out of Stars Hollow, maybe starting some sort of, maybe working on the newspaper with Rory or something like that, and then he will be that support. He'll be the Luke.
He'll publish the book, I bet. He'll publish
yeah.
Gilmore Girls. But then how weird is it if you're like, if you get into a relationship with your stepfather's nephew?
That's not that
okay,
weird.
I just thought I'd throw that out there. I mean, obviously that dynamic's always been there between that foursome, but you know.
It's not as weird as it could be.
I suppose, yeah. So anyway.
It's never weird with Jess.
Hooray, Gilmore Girls. I loved it, and I sincerely hope we get more, but if not, I feel thoroughly satisfied with what we got.
Yes, happy to have them back. But I want to hear what everyone else has to think about it. I know it's been a little bit controversial.
Yeah, I suspect there will be opinions, and you'll put them there, and someone will read them.